Having more or less completed the first season of Monsters Dissected, it is time we talk about errors. Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe, but I am not infallible. Over the course of putting these videos together, I have made a number of mistakes, either presenting incorrect information, missing a crucial part of the thing I was presenting, or phrased things in such a way that they can be easily misunderstood. While I have neither the time nor the desire to delist each video in question and create new versions, I do want to address these problems as they really bother me. I think having a separate quasi-bonus episode presenting them is the next best solution, which is why we've all gathered here. So instead of sweeping my shame under the rug, I'll own up to the mistakes I've made when it comes to this series. Let's begin our crawl through the closet full of skeletons, scrape away Starbear's artwork covering the ugly truth underneath, as the lashes from a scorched form of my guilt and shame drive me to repent. Truth be told, none of them are that bad, but this'll be hopefully informative, perhaps even encourage people to share if they think something I said was incorrect. I'd rather not be one of those fragile creators that break into tears whenever someone suggests they might not have been right about something. Alright, let's get to the chase. Not every video is going to be included, as there are a few where I cannot point to anything I'd add, remove or rephrase. That doesn't mean they are perfect, of course, but I'll skip them for the purpose of this video. The first episode I take issue with is the Cynocephalus one. Don't worry, I'm not going to change my stance on how dog-headed humans are an impossibility, as I have not seen anything to suggest the opposite. No, what I did bad was leaving out prominent parts of one of the most notable sources. While I did mention the fictional travels of Sir John Mandeville, as well as presented what I found about it through a secondary source, I did not look the book up myself. What can I say? The "I was just starting out" argument doesn't hold, as I think I did a pretty thorough job with the first two. I kinda forgot, I guess. To rectify that, let's see what our good old human tampon has to say. The one thing I did mention in the video was the name of the oriental island where cynocephali live, Nekumera. However, he goes into much more depth. He calls the hound-headed people reasonable, with good understanding. So, in other words, sapient and civilized. He calls them great folk, which might suggest they are hospitable towards outsiders. Although not a sentence later, he also states cynocephali eat anyone they defeat in battle. For indeed, they wage war against each other. They are excellent fighters, commonly using a large torch, a type of shield, and a spear. As for clothing, though, they wear nothing more than a little cloud that they cover with their knees and their members. I'm guessing the women folk dress differently, as they do not tend to have members, but as is a rather common case with mythical and fantasy races, only one gender is properly explored. Regardless, he does mention one thing he perceives as an issue, which is that they worship an ox god. As a religious custom, each of them wears a golden or silver ox shape on their forehead, which shows their devotion to the deity. Indeed, religion seems to be of great concern for these dogmen, but the materials also highlight their wealth, all reinforced by the paragraph Sir Mandeville wrote about their king. This oligarch puts many humans of similar standing to shame with his treasury. 300 pearls frame his neck, each large and of high quality, the jewelry resembling an amber paternoster. Beside the pearls, he wears a noble and fine ruby, a foot in length and 5 fingers large. That's quite a huge gem, which plays a prominent role in their coronation ceremony, when a new king is chosen, which suggests a form of democracy, or meritocracy at the very least. He is led around their city on a horse, holding the enormous red mineral in his hand. This ruby is greatly coveted by the Chen of Cathay, Cathay being an old-timey name for China. However, he could not obtain it, be it through war or trade, which suggests the cynocephali have quite the army to hold China at bay. To flatter this benevolent ruler a little more, Sir Mandeville states that the king says 300 prayers to his bovine god every day, not even eating anything until he is done. Additionally, he rules with such supreme power and impeccable morals that he personally ensures no one will be robbed while on his island. If for some reason a subject would betray him and resort to stealing from a traveler, he will rectify that mistake with swift judgment. That's quite a valuable info I omitted from the video, which really deepens the lore of the dog-headed man. Kinda makes me want to see a setting featuring them that is true to all of this. Now, this was all really interesting, but ultimately changes little as to the conclusion of the original video. A neat addendum, but does not warrant a rewrite. However, there is still one thing missing from this episode. I know it's the Emmental of Monsters Dissected videos. Originally, I mentioned the Indri and faraway nations as potential inspirations for this monstrous race, but there is at least one more prominent possibility: Geladas. These Ethiopian baboons also fit the bill quite well. Not only do they live relatively close to Europe, making encounters more likely, they have a dark fur, pronounced muzzle, large fangs, and a vegetarian diet despite the vicious teeth. To make the connection even stronger, they are a rather vocal species of primates. These noises are not too far off from what one would consider barks, but they are significantly more complex. The speech of Geladas is actually remarkably close to human communication, using their lips to alter their vocal signals. It would not take too much imagination for a traveler to assume that these dog-headed, hairy people are talking. Well, it would take practically no imagination, as they almost are talking. With these factors in mind, I would without a doubt place Geladas at the top of the inspiration hierarchy. There we go. The gaping holes of missing information filled with the sweet nectar of knowledge. So, moving on, 2 brief little notes for the Drekavats. Yeah, you heard that right. In the original video, I did an oopsie and pronounced the name wrong. It should be Drekavats. Additionally, someone wrote in the comments it also sounds like cats mating. Yeah. I wonder where that sound actually comes from. Anyway, here's a poorly phrased sentence from another video, namely the Yemish one. I said about the half snake, half fox creature that it's both a mammal and a reptile, which is not a thing. While technically true, especially in the case of a creature that is just divided by an arbitrary line, having both ectotherm and endotherm parts, combining the anatomy of rather different classes, it leaves out an important group of extinct animals, synapsids, formerly referred to as mammal-like reptiles. While the term has been abandoned for taxonomical reasons, it is still a fitting description to an extent. This varied group included a wide range of animals, from the Dimetrodon to the Pristerognathus, both resembling mammals and reptiles in varying degrees. While you could not technically call them either, they share features of both. Therefore, while the statement is not incorrect, it kind of bothered me that I did not even mention them. Could have even made the Yemish a synapsid. Oh well, I kind of made up for it with the questing beast as a sort of neosynapsid. So, after a slight addendum, let's have a significant correction. Here's my version of the Loch Ness Monster. I'm showing my drawing instead of Starbear's, as it was based on mine, and I was the one to do the massive oopsie. Supposedly, this is a unicid, but some of you might have very well spotted a grave mistake I made while doodling this thing. The eyes. They are at the wrong place. These bristleworms, including the bobbit worm, which was kind of a model species, have their eyes near the base of their antennae. They need to focus on what is in front of them, and the peepers on the sides would help little in catching prey. Not only that, but moving to that head segment would be quite the evolutionary leap that is also detrimental and would therefore never happen. However, the regular bristleworm eyes require a bit of an upgrade at this size, so they would definitely be more on the complex side. Regardless, say goodbye to the adorable blinkers on each side and say hello to a bear trap of a face laser focused at biting you. Yeah, this mistake and the Cynocephalus omission were the 2 most significant driving forces behind this errata, as both are other notable errors on my part. However, we are not done yet. Oh no, I was a dum-dum a couple more times. Next one is the Ningyo episode. So I showed off this image without actually knowing what it depicted, thinking it was an Ningyo. Well, it was a mermaid, but not exactly the peoplefish I was dissecting then. Someone was kind enough to point out that it was the Emebi, a beaked merman with 3 caudal fins whose emergence prophesizes a rich harvest or a terrible epidemic. I won't go into more detail here, as I might very well cover this creature in a future episode, and I'd rather do it justice as opposed to just going over it in a few sentences in the middle of a mostly unrelated video. Let's have another sudden transition to the next item on the list. The Ophinicus episode. In relation to this feathered Draco lizard, I stated that camel necks are no go too, there's just no reason for it and it would just be dead weight. Well, that was a bold-faced lie. The long neck is not only perfectly feasible, there is precedence for it. The Mechistotrachelus genus encompassed long-necked gliding reptiles. Unfortunately, we know relatively little about these animals. The one species described so far is called Mechistotrachelus apeurus, which means soaring and long-necked, but the reason for this prominent feature we can only guess. Interestingly, the first pair of ribs that extends their membranous wings are surprisingly short, while the following ones are long, each having strong connection points. These gliders combined have a wingspan that roughly matches the estimated length of the reptile at about 1.5 meters. They were significantly larger than the Mindanao flying dragon, which holds the record among contemporary species at around a meter. However, a sizable portion of that length was a result of their long neck. While we do not know what advantage exactly this feature provided, it could just as well be an evolutionary quirk, a remnant of the predecessors of the species, something that would have disappeared over time. There is no evolutionary link between this genus and Dracos, but the fact that the more modern versions never developed this elongated neck is quite telling. However, being as fair as I can, it is not as unlikely as I have initially thought. Let's add it as a maybe to the lore of the realistic Copernicus. Alright, so this one was recorded at a later date because I initially forgot about it and only remembered it during editing, so it will probably sound very different from other parts of the errata, but there is one piece of incorrect information in the Thunderbird video too. According to a helpful commenter, Titanis is currently dated to have gone extinct 1.8 million years ago, with the 15,000 year date now considered to have been poor dating. I dug around a bit, sifting through a few articles. Lo and behold, they were right. In 2007, the fossils of the Titanis were confirmed to be older than what was previously thought of them. Therefore, an encounter between the first human arrivals and these vicious birds is highly unlikely. As with most other massive avian species, bones found by people are the only possible source of inspiration for thunderbirds. We still have some things dead or correct. Let's see. The Werraven video. This is more of an expansion. One feature I did not cover, but perhaps should have, as one commenter did ask about it. Since our realistic Werraven originated from raptors, their arms would have had to go through quite the evolution to become hands. Their ancient forms would not have been able to properly pronate their palms. That is not an actual problem early on though. Grabbing and smashing bones does not require such a feat, but as they use their front limbs for more and more complex tasks, there need to be a lot of changes, most of which I only glossed over in the video. Their shoulders, wrists and thumbs all need to acquire a design similar to those of primates. Perfectly plausible within the time frame they have, and a definite possibility given the niche they fill. While this change is featured on the drawing, I perhaps did not do it an oral justice. That came out weird. Anyway, let's see the video you all watched on a different channel, right? I got some fair criticism for it, as I was rather dismissive of the idea of venom. The vast majority of known squids are venomous to varying degrees, injecting their nasty substance by practically spitting into the wound they tear with their beaks. This is usually deadly or has a paralyzing effect on their prey, but few have the capacity to harm humans. Now, I argued that the Yetiveo would not benefit from such a weapon as it cannot chase prey, while true, subduing the flailing victim is a good ability to have. That being said, since the legends describe the barbs to inject the venom, causing growing ulcers, and since the tree squid's unique hunting method would mean that the bite would only take place after the victim has been delivered to the beak, not necessarily when it would be most useful, it is not an automatic inclusion as is. I'd say the wounds getting infected would still be the origin of that aspect of the tales, but that does not mean it cannot excrete venomous liquids by its beak. This feature is rather consistent with cephalopods, so it would be incorrect to assume it would not be present in any way, since even a weaker chemical that would only dizzy or stun the prey could mean the animal has to expend less energy to hold it in place while feeding. It definitely gives an advantage. As for how significant that is, and how strong the effects would be, that could very well vary from species to species. Some might even go without having any, while others, likely smaller ones, could rely extremely heavily on this ability. So yeah, they would very likely be venomous to different degrees. With this, we've come to a rather unceremonious end. However, there might very well be problems no one has noticed so far, which would be quite awkward as I don't intend to remake this video. I'll probably leave it in a pinned comment if anything else comes up. All that's left to properly finish the first series is the community project, where I ask you to craft a monster of your own based on the options available in this form. Once again, you'll find it via a link in the description if you haven't filled it out yet. It is not the very next thing I'll do, so there's some time left if you are interested in contributing. Anyway, that's it for this errata. Hope it was informative. Hope I didn't just tank my credibility. Hope to see you next time. Bye.